Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Early Childhood Care and Education Updates in the 2023 Assembly Session. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. Just a couple of reminders. When you joined today's webinar, you selected to join either by phone or computer. So if for any reason you would like to change your selection, you can do so by following the directives in the automated email from Zoom, which contains instructions for how to join by phone and computer. This webinar is being recorded. All participants are placed on mute for quality assurance. You will have the opportunities to submit text questions by selecting the Q&A button at the bottom of your control panel, located at the bottom of your screen. The recording for today's webinar and the slides will be shared via email with all registrants following the event. I'd now like to turn things over to Kathy Glazer, President of the Virginia Early Childhood Foundation, to start the program.
Thank you, Nolly, and good afternoon, everybody, and Happy New Year to you all. I'm really glad that you're having a chance to take part of your day and join us to hear some updates, some important updates today. Thank you for doing so. I'm also grateful to our speakers who have come to this event today to bring updates and information from their perspectives. We will first hear from Randy Pearson, who's with Two Capitals Consulting, who will give a brief overview of the 2023 General Assembly session. After Randy's finished, we'll turn to Jenna Conway with the Virginia Department of Education, who will provide an update, and then to Amy Hathaway with the Virginia Early Childhood Foundation to talk about the mixed delivery program. So let's get started. And Randy, thank you for coming today and look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kathy. And it's great to be here again. As Kathy said, I'm Randy Pearson with Two Capitals Consulting and have the privilege of working on behalf of the Virginia Promise Partnership in Richmond on their government policy and policy priorities. So with that, we'll launch into an update on some of the things we are working on that we know about and some of the key priorities that are going to be coming down the pipe in the 2023 session of the General Assembly, which is set to start, as many folks may know, next week, next Wednesday. So we are right around the corner from the start of the new legislative session for the General Assembly, which will be a short or likely 45-day session upcoming. So with that, we can go to the next slide. So the first bill we'd like to talk about with you all, and this is kind of the biggest piece of legislation or the most substantive piece of legislation we are working on this year that we will be supporting. And this is a bill that's being introduced by Delegate Carrie Corner. She represents parts of Chesterfield County, Hopewell, in that area just south of Richmond, and has been a champion in this space for a long time and during her time in the General Assembly over the last several years. This bill is kind of reconstituting something that already exists, which is the School Readiness Committee. And what we're doing by doing that is creating a new commission on early childhood care and education. And the title kind of belies the importance of this, and it kind of makes it sound like we're just renaming something that already exists. What we're really doing is totally reconstituting it and turning it into a much more substantive, much more meaningful commission that is going to take up and work on critical issues in early childhood education and child care every year throughout the year, even outside the legislative session. And as folks may know, there are many commissions and committees that meet throughout the year in Virginia, even when the legislature is not in session. And this will be a new one that will be able to do things like take up legislation that may not have passed the previous session, but had some merit to it, had some things that need to be worked out. So now we have a commission that can do that work, can also look at concepts around funding, can look at concepts around new funding models, and can really do some of the nitty-gritty work that needs to be done to get bills and budget amendments and budget language ready for the session the following January. The other reason this is so important is it's going to help us create more champions in this space, both from the citizen members of this committee as well as the legislators who will be appointed to this commission. And you will have a legislative chair of this commission. You will have other legislators on this commission on a bipartisan basis from both the Senate and the House in Virginia. And so you will have a whole group of folks in positions to make things happen when the legislature is in session, who will be invested in this work, who will be owning this work, and who will be taking it up throughout the year. So it's not just something we're picking up in December as we get ready for session and then kind of sprinting through it in January and February and early March. This is going to be a meeting throughout the year, working through these important issues, and again, kind of giving some new life to this work that needs to happen in the off season, which we really think will be impactful in the short and long term. And we think it'll really give us an opportunity to see more concepts in this important policy space come forward in a way that they are ready for prime time. They're ready to go forward as legislative items or as budget items. And so we are very excited about this. We're very grateful for Delegate Pointer agreeing to put this in. And so we will be working very hard to make sure this makes it through and gets to the governor's desk by the end of this session. With that, we can go to the next slide. So now I'll touch on a couple of key items in the budget. And again, this is for folks that know, the budget process is a very fluid process. The governor has introduced his budget. The General Assembly will now take that budget up, and they have the option to amend it as much as they would like. The House and Senate will perform their own budget bills with the amendments they choose to adopt to the House bill and Senate budget bill that the governor has introduced. We do expect they will be radically different from what we have seen from the governor's introduced budget, particularly in the Senate side, where the Senate is controlled by Democrats, the House is controlled by Republicans currently. So we expect the House budget may align more with what the governor has done, but probably will still have some significant changes. The Senate may be dramatically different from what the governor has done, given that they are coming from a different side of the aisle. So with that, we can go to the next slide. I'll just touch on one of the biggest things that we are excited about that is in the introduced budget. The governor did elect to put in $20 million for a pilot program for public-private delivery of these preschool services for at-risk children in 2 planning districts in particular, and these are the Lenawisco and Crater planning districts. Lenawisco is in far southwest Virginia, down towards the Tennessee border. The Crater district is in the Petersburg area, just south of Richmond, and these are 2 areas we identified of high need of these services, need of this high quality service for these at-risk children. And so we were very encouraged to see this funding in the budget. Again, this is in the introduced budget. It's funding they have allocated to these areas and to this program, this pilot program. So it's very exciting. As I was saying before, the budget process, it's a long process. It's very fluid. Having an introduced budget does not mean that it is a sure thing to be in there when all is said and done in a few months. But we are going to be working very hard to make sure that this stays in the budget, potentially grows, and working on protecting and growing this investment the governor has opted to make in the introduced budget. So with that, we can go to the next slide. This is just some language that is also in the introduced budget around providing some flexibility around childcare staff to children ratios. So this is just giving some of the ability for the superintendent of public instruction at DOE to alter staff to child ratios. And again, this is about providing flexibility while still maintaining high quality of care, high quality of the child care center. So we view this as a very positive piece of language that is in the budget that we will look forward to supporting and hopefully keeping in there. Go to the next slide. And the last one I'll touch on specifically that is in the introduced budget is this revision of the teacher requirement for Virginia Preschool Initiative community provider programs. Again, this is about just maintaining that high quality, better alignment of some of these requirements under community-based providers, under VPI mixed delivery. So just increasing the number of children who are served in high quality preschool settings. So again, good language like the previous language around flexibility, and this is about maintaining that high quality and standard for preschool settings. We can go to the next slide. And I won't touch on all these. This is just an overview of things that were maintained from the biennial budget. So these are things that were already in the budget that were not removed, were not altered. These are things you may have heard about before, like expansion of mixed delivery preschool programs, expansion of early educator requirement retention grants. These are things, again, that we've had in the previous budget. We're pleased that they are still in there and we're not touched and we're not altered in any way. We'll be continuing to monitor and make sure there are no changes made to them by the House or Senate in their budget process. But we are again encouraged that the governor and the administration opted to leave those in and not touch those in any way because we view them as a positive. So that's a very quick overview of a couple of the key priorities that we have seen so far, both on the legislative side and the budget side. There will certainly be other things that come up, both through the legislative process of folks introducing bills that we can support, have questions about, and will engage on, and also folks who are going to introduce budget amendments to amend the budget the governor's introduced. Those are due next Friday, and so we'll see a whole host of those come through over the next week to 10 days. So we will have more to update folks on, but that gives you kind of a lay of the land of where things are in this space going into the session, which again starts next Wednesday. So with that, I will pause and I will answer any questions that folks may have that I can.
Thank you, Randy. What a great update. And folks, see the Q&A icon on your screen. If you have questions for Randy about the presentation he just made, please type them in the questions box and we'll be glad to try to get to those. And I will repeat that the recording of this presentation as well as the slides will be shared broadly. No problem with getting that information to all attendees after the presentation. And Randy, as we wait to see if anybody has questions for you at the moment, I will also just echo your kudos to Delegate Carrie Coiner, who has been such a champion in this issue and sort of really trying to rally support and coalesce support for early childhood education. We do have a couple of questions that have come in. And let's see, I think that there's a question about foreseeing a change in staff to child ratio in the near future. I think that I will ask Jenna to address that when she does her presentation. I think she's going to touch on that. So Randy, I won't put you on the spot for that one. And then also, let's see. Oh, there are all the questions look to be about the item about the flexible ratios. And again, we'll get into a little bit more detail about what that means in just a few moments. Let's see, Nolly, there's a request to go back to the screen that listed the items. Don't know if there was one that was before the previous screen. Great, thank you. More questions, lots of interest about the ratios. So Jenna, just a heads up that that will be something that we'll put you on the spot for. A clarifying question, Randy, from another attendee. These are standing items from last year, but they still require approval, or are they just these moving forward again next year as currently noted?
So on the last slide there of my presentation, now if we just get back to that, these are bullets that these are the items that are there is no action taken on them this year. They will remain in there. They remain untouched unless there is action by the House or Senate throughout the budget process to change anything you see here. So yes, the answer to that question is yes. These are items that were not in any way amended, so they remain in the budget as previously constituted. And unless there is again action taken by either chamber, they will remain as you see them now.
Terrific. We also have a question about mention of teacher qualifications and asking for elaboration on that. I think that's something also Jenna will be tackling in her presentation. A question about whether mixed delivery is statewide and what does expansion mean. Amy's presentation will answer all of those questions. Let's see. We'll have interest in the early educator recruitment and retention grants, which Jenna will touch on as well. And just a question or a comment that there's a great deal of concern about the mental health of both providers and of children, and wondering whether there will be additions or budget items focused on increased supportive services for community-based programs like mixed delivery. Randy, you may want to touch on that. That may be something that we watch for in the coming days as to whether anybody introduces a bill or a budget amendment for that.
That's exactly right, Kathy. We will keep an eye out for those that come from either the Senate or the House in the budget amendment process, which again, as I mentioned, member budget amendments are due next Friday at 5 o'clock. And then they are typically all going to be posted, or they will all be posted publicly a few days later. It takes staff a few days just to work through the process of editing and publishing all of them, so that you'll be able to see all of those online as they come out. And then they will be taken up by both chambers as they put together their own budget bill. On the mental health piece, folks may have seen the governor did announce a few weeks ago a big mental health overhaul that he is pushing, along with some significant funding in that space. I'm not aware of anything in there that was particular to childcare providers, but that is certainly something for us to keep an eye on as well and see if that comes up as the discussion moves forward on the governor's plan and the introduced budget around mental health and the mental health overhaul.
Perfect. And Randy, I'll ask you one more question and then we will let you go. One of our attendees asked, what can we do to make our voices heard as childcare professionals?
Sure, that's a great question. The most important thing I think you can do is identify who your legislators are. And it's, if you don't know, it's very easy to go on and go online, and there are multiple sites that will point you to who your state delegate are and who your senator are. It's not to say that you shouldn't contact more than just your legislator, but you will have the highest success rate of getting a response, getting some actual action on what you're asking them about if it is your elected representative. And so I would say, figure out who that is if you don't know. If you do know, or if you don't have a relationship, start building one. Start engaging with those folks and letting them know, and not in a, you always say, not in a hostile way, and not in a we're going in, attacking folks for what they haven't done, but more of a, this is a concern, here's why it's a concern. I want to be a resource to you in your office, knowing that most of these folks are not experts on childcare, not experts on early childhood education, and they would tell you that. And so educating them, building relationships, letting them know that you're a resource. If you are a childcare provider and you work, you own a center, or you have a center where folks can come out and visit, invite legislators out for a visit during the off season. They're going to be pretty busy in January and February, so you won't have much success getting folks out for things like that during that time. But inviting folks out outside of the session to come, meet folks who work with you, and you interact with them and learn about your issues. It's very, very important to help educate them and inform these folks. And then also, I would just say, again, I point back to the importance of the commission bill that Carrie Pointer has put in. That there's going to be a new group of legislators who are very invested in this policy space. So keep an eye out for those folks. We don't know who it'll be yet. They will be appointed hopefully once, assuming the bill passes, which is, we have a long way to go there. Keep an eye out for who that group is once they're appointed, assuming the bill passes. And that will be another great smaller group of folks for you all to engage with, to try and build those relationships with and influence policy that comes out of that commission. So that's just a few things to hit on there, Kathy. I hope that hit the mark.
That was terrific. I'm also typing in to the Q&A that folks can visit vapromisepartnership.org to learn a lot more about how they can get involved. But that was a great overview, Randy. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And I don't know if you're able to stay on a little bit longer if folks have questions, but we really appreciate your being here today. Thanks so much, Randy.
Absolutely.
And next, we're looking forward to hearing from Jenna Conway from the Virginia Department of Education. And Nolly, I think you can go to the next slide and we'll turn it to Jenna.
Good afternoon. Happy New Year. It is great to see everyone. I'm Jenna Conway. I'm the Deputy Superintendent for Early Childhood Care and Education, and really pleased to follow Randy and really share how some of this upcoming action fits in with the broader efforts of our work together over the next few years. So my goal, if we can move to the next slide, is to provide an update on where we are in terms of enrollment and sort of how many kids are being served. We'll talk about all program types: Head Start, family childcare in schools, and then talk in a little bit more detail about how some of the things that Randy talked about fit into our broader strategies to make sure that we're working together to give every kid in the Commonwealth the opportunity to come to school ready. You've seen this slide before, but basically I always start with what our true north is, our why, that we're working together to make sure that all kids in Virginia have the opportunity to come to school ready. Right now, we still know that 4 out of 10 come in less prepared than their peers, and we're all working together, public and private, across every city and county in the state to better support programs. I'll talk about access, choice, and enrollment today. We'll talk a little bit about our quality measurement system and some efforts there to demonstrate the extraordinary work that you're doing for kids and families. You'll notice a theme throughout my points today, and you'll see in this next bullet about this idea of really compensating our educators to make sure that they're supported to do what they need to do to address their mental health and ultimately to get quality outcomes for kids. And as you'll hear today, I always try to include our data, our information about Virginia, about what we know, because we're trying to build a unified system where we use data to inform our decisions as we move forward. Next slide, please. Here you'll see the goals that we work on. And again, in recent years in Virginia, we've done an incredible job of moving our different systems under one umbrella with the goal of all of us working together across our public, private, parent choice system to prepare all kids for school. You'll see our goals here. We think about access and choice and enrollment. We're thinking about quality improvement, which includes thinking about educator mental health. We want to deeply engage families at every step in the way. We got to keep our kids healthy and safe. And we're working really closely with our partners at VCF in our ready regions to make sure we're building the infrastructure to support the thousands of diverse programs that serve our kids and families across the state. As you'll hear throughout my presentation today, we're really focused, laser focused on how do we get to more competitive educator compensation. We know, and we hear from you day in, day out, that the workforce challenges still remain enormous. And that's with keeping you from serving more kids, from addressing your wait list, and from really getting to the quality that you want to, because you're having to deal with such frequent turnover, shortages in substitutes or staff, and always a scramble, right? Rather than being able to focus on what matters most, which is those day-to-day interactions with kids. Next slide, please. So where are we today? So this is a bright spot, and just want to note this with the numbers, and you'll hear some of these have even gone up since November, but we did a quick snapshot as of November. And as you see kind of across the board, we are serving more kids. I think remains true. We are serving more kids in early childhood in Virginia with public dollars than we have ever done before in the Commonwealth's history. This is really, really exciting, particularly when we think about all that you've been through over the last few years with the pandemic. We've seen an increase in our Virginia preschool initiative, both in terms of 3 and 4-year-olds, going up to 21,000 kids, 640. I looked at the last decade of our pre-K enrollment in the schools. We've never enrolled more kids than this year. Mixed delivery, we've never seen these numbers, upwards of 32% increase from the prior year for 3 and 4-year-olds, and 200 infants and toddlers for the first time ever. You can't divide by 0, so there's no percentage increase there, but this is enormous growth. And as Amy will talk about later, it's even gone up since November. Our child care subsidy program is serving more kids in child care center, family child care, and religious exempt programs than we've ever done before. We're at about 37,000 kids statewide, up from 20,000 pre-pandemic. And you'll see we've had a 30% growth in infants and toddlers and nearly the same in preschoolers. So really enormous growth in infants and toddlers. And then we continue to work very closely with our early Head Start and Head Start partners to fill every one of those last slots. It's so important that we maximize every single federal dollar that comes down for Head Start to serve our most vulnerable kids and families. So just huge excitement in terms of where we are as a system and how many infants and toddlers and preschoolers we're serving across all of our different program types. Next slide, please. Here's another way to kind of look at these numbers. So these are the different programs, as you'll see in the bottom: Early Head Start, CCSP is our child care subsidy program, which is in child care centers, family child care, family day homes, and in our religious exempt programs, Virginia Preschool Initiative and Mixed Delivery. What you see is across the board significant gains here. One thing to note, we've seen the biggest one-year gains in our infants and toddlers. So we've never had as many of our dollars going towards infants and toddlers slots as we have now. We still continue to see the most dollars support preschool, and then some of our funds support school-age kids, which is also really important because we know our family child care and child care providers rely on all of the different sources of revenue to make this work. Next slide, please. Very exciting. As I said before, historic highs in enrollment in early childhood in Virginia, yet there's still tremendous unmet need. And so want to kind of temper and get you urgent and excited as we go into session and we sort of fight for all that we've accomplished together. So the good news is that we're serving more kids than ever before. The challenge that remains is we still have pretty tremendous unmet needs. So if you look at just at 3 and 4-year-olds, what this chart says is that we basically serve about half of the kids in need who are 3 and 4-year-olds. So we still got 50,000 kids out there just with 3 and 4-year-olds alone who could benefit from a high quality early childhood experience. Most of those are 3-year-olds. And so we're working really closely with all of our programs to kind of increase access. And the numbers get so big, we can't even fit them on a chart on this page when we think about infants and toddlers. So we should pat ourselves on the back for all of the work that we've done to enroll more kids, but recognize that there still are tons of kids on your wait list, particularly for infants, and there are tons of kids who are at home who could benefit from a high quality experience that puts them on track for success. Next slide, please. All right, so let me speak really briefly about some of the things we're doing to continue to push those numbers upwards. I want to note, as what Randy said before, we've got a lot of this stuff baked into our budget, but that doesn't mean that we don't need to stop kind of pushing and encouraging our lawmakers and to understand how important this work is. So I'll walk through both what we've already got in the budget as well as some of these new things, and maybe be able to answer some of the questions I know that came up in the Q&A. Next slide, please. So one of the real important shifts since the last time we've been together is trying across the board to fund all of our programs that take public dollars, our family day homes, our childcare centers, our schools, and our faith-based programs and our Head Starts and others where possible, to meet the expectations of the program. So shifting away from a market-based approach, which is really based on what parents could pay, to calculating how much it costs for you to provide quality and to fund you to do that. So here are some principles that I wanted to lay out before getting into the detail that you'll see across all of our work together. So we're trying to make more kids eligible and make sure that we're getting that per child funding up, right? That we're not just doing one or the other, right? Making more kids eligible, but not funding you to achieve expectations, but doing both things at once, getting rates up and making more kids and family eligible. Across our programs, some pretty significant shifts in funding you based on the cost of care, not based on what parents can pay, but on what it costs to operate. And when we do that, we're assuming higher than ever before levels for teacher compensation. We're not requiring those changes yet, right? Because we want to work with you and we understand that your budgets are complicated, but across the board saying, we got to fund you to be able to pay teachers more. We recognize, and we got to make sure that we pay a ton of attention there when you think about infants and toddlers, and there's very low teacher-child ratios. And we need to shift to funding you more based on enrollment, right? So that we cover those days we need to be closed, we cover those holidays. We're looking across the board to expand our slots in our community-based settings. Just because we're at VDOE doesn't mean that every dollar needs to go into the schools. In fact, we know, and I saw questions from Family Day Homes, that sometimes our parents of infants and toddlers would prefer a family day home setting. And so making sure that there's choice and that we're rewarding private programs who want to take public dollars, in addition to making sure that we're partnering with all of our schools. A real focus on making sure that we realize that 1 year pre-K is awesome, but is not sufficient to truly putting kids on track for success, and figuring out how we offer all kids who are in need a 3 and 4 year old experience that puts them on track for success, while also making sure we're not reducing access for infants and toddlers. And then continuing to demonstrate that there's just so much need in Virginia and connecting that need to our workforce. So these are conversations we have with our governor, with our General Assembly, around sort of helping them understand that it's not just about helping kids get ready for kindergarten, but that moms, working moms, myself included, can't do our jobs if we don't have access to preschool and early childhood programming that enables their kids to be healthy and safe and thrive, while we can contribute to our broader thriving Virginia economy. Next slide, please. So a couple of highlights here. I won't read every word on the slide, but just want to kind of anchor what Randy was talking about. So we're continuing to expand our Virginia preschool initiative. Most of these slots are in schools for 4-year-olds and now 3-year-olds, and our 3-year-old numbers are growing the greatest. But we've also note that there are places where we don't have enough classrooms in our schools, and we want to partner more with community providers. We've increased this number pretty significantly. We fund our community providers at a greater rate. We've calculated that cost of quality, and the budget language from the governor gives additional flexibility. So it means you don't have to have a teacher with a teacher's license if you're working in a community-based setting. We know that's been a barrier. And so wanting to give you more flexibility on who you can hire to be the teacher if you'd like to run a Virginia Preschool Initiative classroom for 3 or for 4-year-olds in your community-based or your private childcare setting. So that's pretty exciting to get that language, and it lines up with the language we already have in the budget for our mixed delivery partners. We've also increased by $11 million the overall funding for the Virginia Preschool Initiative. So really exciting there. And this last year, we made all kids with special needs, regardless of socioeconomics or neighborhood or background, all kids with special need are now eligible for VPI. That's the first time ever in the state. Next slide, please. Mixed delivery, again, our partner program to VPI in our private settings. We've been working really closely with Kathy and Amy to basically refigure out, kind of recalculate how we fund mixed delivery to address competitive compensation. And so as we roll that out, more money per child, with particularly addressing how much more expensive it is to serve infants and toddlers, and working really with you to help support increasing educator compensation. So very excited to see that $20 million towards the new slots, as well as an increase in the state dollars for the more traditional mixed delivery program. So we've really grown this program from what was a couple hundred kids to now way more than 2,000 kids across the state who are being served. And with some of the shifts this year, we hope that each of you will receive per child funding that truly helps you to address the costs that it takes you to deliver quality for kids. Next slide, please. You'll notice I'll start to get repetitive here, but we've tried to make this happen across our programs. Some of you noted our partners who receive child care subsidy or participate in that program. We made the rates go up as of October 1st, and you saw that come in some of the reimbursements that started rolling out at November 1st. But really across the board, we saw pretty significant increases, with the biggest increases for infant and toddler care and some of the biggest increases in family child care. So we really heard from you that we were underfunding you. And as a result, you were not able to pay your teachers competitively. And as a result of that, it's a vicious cycle. Teachers were leaving, and then you were scrambling to hire, and you couldn't serve kids, and you couldn't do the best job that you wanted to do. So really working with you to address that. And again, as Randy noted, that's locked into our budget, and we'll need to continue to protect that. We've increased enrollment dramatically, again, going from 20,000 kids to 37,000 kids, kind of across the board, while also making as many kids and families as possible eligible. And we seem to have lost the slides for a second here. I can jump right back in, but and then the other key pieces here, continuing to sort of streamline family co-payments, as you know, which is again and reducing them as compared to pre-pandemic. Surveying you all to make sure that we're hearing from you on what works and what doesn't. And then the last piece here, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, is the ratios. And there's some new language added. It's actually not new language. It's the same language that was in the budget cycle a few years ago. So some of you might remember where we sent out information to the same thing. You can request in writing to increase your ratio, either one child per educator for those kids 5 and under, and up to two children per educator for school age. So that is, if that budget goes through, you can expect a similar process to one that the department undertook about a year and a half ago, where you can request additional ratio flexibility if you need it because of the workforce challenges that you're facing. All right, if we could move ahead a couple of slides. One more, and then one more to Head Start. Excellent. Again, continuing to work with our Head Start partners. We can't control the funding for Head Start, but we know, and as I said before, we really recognize that the slots that the federal government funds to serve Virginia kids and families, our most vulnerable kids and families, are incredibly important. And so we continue to work with our Head Start partners, Tonda Jeffries, our head of Head Start collaboration, to work with all of our recipient agencies to get to full enrollment, and also looking at how we can partner with them if they want to take advantage of things like the child care subsidy program, or if there's additional resources for wraparound programming as we sort to make the most of Head Start, but also meet the needs of family, and continuing to support coordination across the programs so that we maximize every single federal dollar that comes into the state. Next slide, please. All right, my last point here, and I know I've talked a lot about how we're getting more resources to you, we're making more families and kids eligible, and we're serving more kids than ever before. At the same time we're doing that really important work, we also know that we have to continue to support improvement and be able to demonstrate the return on this investment. And that's normally a point that Randy often talks about, right, as we talk about the value of early childhood, the value of enabling families to work, and the value that we see for our kids as they come out of our programs and go into K-12. So we continue to make progress with your support on VQB5. We have 2,600 sites participating this year, more than doubling where we were from last year. Thousands and thousands and thousands of classroom observations in which we're showing the great work of your educators. We're expanding Recognize B5 up to, went up to $2,500 for this year that we're wrapping up, and we'll go up to, the budget is slated to go up to $3,000 for next year. And we're serving, I think, upwards of 9,000 educators this year, with potentially more next year. So just an enormous, enormous program where we directly support our educators in childcare and family childcare. And as we'll talk a little bit about with Kathy and Amy and on mixed delivery, really across the board, you've heard me talk about it. We need to competitively pay our teachers. Recognize B5 helps. It's anywhere from an 18 to 20% increase in their compensation, but we know that we need more, right? When Walmart and Target and all of these folks are coming in at higher hourly rates, we're just not getting the teachers that we need to get, and we're not able to retain them. So continuing to figure out how we give you more resources, so in turn, you can hire, prepare, support, and retain the top talent that ultimately helps prepare all of our kids for kindergarten. So with that, let me pause there. I'm sure they've had some questions. I tried to answer some of them, Kathy, but why don't you let me know some of the ones that I did not answer.
Oh, well, I think you did address many of them, but I may ask you to reiterate, just because I think it's helpful for people to hear the detail more than once. Lots of questions. Could you just summarize again the change in staff to child ratio? Do we know any specifics, and for what length of time is that in place?
Yeah, so the way it's currently written, it would go into effect when the budget is signed and would last till the June 30th of 2024. So similar to last time, a time-based flexibility. It gives the superintendent the ability to grant that. So this is not just, okay, the budget's signed, I can do this. What we'll do is run a process similar to what we did before, which is you request in writing the flexibility. We make sure you're a program in good standing, and then we send you something back saying that you've been granted this flexibility for the period going through June 30th of 2024. We then keep your name on a list. So we make sure we know that you've got that flexibility. And again, we had folks who said we used it. We had folks who applied for it last time and said we didn't use it, but we wanted to have it in case we had somebody call out. We had a concern. So it's really just intended to be flexibility to you. We'll run a process, we'll announce it in Readiness Connection, and we'll use that listserv that goes to everybody who's licensed and registered that goes through this detail on how you can request it.
Perfect. Thank you. Lots of interest in that, so thank you. Also, could you just again summarize the Recognize B5 program, who is involved, how that works?
Absolutely. So this is for all child care and family child care programs that take public funds that are participating in VQB5. And what it is it's a direct to educator incentive that goes to any teacher who's working with kids 30 hours or more per week. So we run a process each late summer in which you register for the program. You then send us some materials, and then I believe we cut you 2 checks over the course of the year. So the registration for this year is closed, but as folks sign up for VQB5 next year, if you receive public dollars, your teachers will be eligible for that program, and they'll just need to register usually we start, I think, in August.
Terrific. Thank you. Let's see, a couple more questions. We do have a question about whether there will be any more child care program grants.
That's a great question. And again, we were so pleased, and thanks for everybody's partnership around the Child Care Stabilization Grants. We were able to get all of the dollars out in a really timely fashion. Some of you, we did 4 rounds instead of 3, which basically brought us up to, over the course between the Department of Social Services and us, over 8 rounds of direct cash assistance. That was what was required, and we have completely exhausted that funding source from the federal government. And so now all of our remaining relief dollars we're using to increase rates and to serve as many kids as possible. So it's, we do not think there are going to be any additional rounds of our CARES grants, but we are instead using any of those remaining relief dollars for funding you at the highest rate possible and funding as many kids as possible in the Commonwealth, trying to make sure that we don't have kids on childcare subsidy wait lists across the state.
Great. Randy had mentioned a potential shift in teacher qualifications for VPI community provider sites. Could you give a little more detail about that?
Yeah, so right now our law allows for quite a bit of flexibility for mixed delivery. It basically says if you're offering quality preschool in a private childcare or community setting, that you have some flexibility on who you can hire. Previously, it was understood that for the Virginia Preschool Initiative program, that in most cases, there's some exceptions, but in most cases, if you wanted to take a VPI grant to fund your preschool classroom, you needed to find a bachelor's degree licensed teacher. And we heard from you that that was a barrier. And so we've tried to address that. So the language in the budget means that if you wanted to partner with your locality or school division to offer a VPI classroom, not at the elementary school, not, but at your private childcare or other community-based setting, that you could do that and you would have greater flexibility around who you hired to be the lead teacher. So we hope that by offering that flexibility, it means that more of you might be interested, particularly in the place where we're not using all of our VPI slots, to be willing to consider offering a VPI classroom at your site.
Great. Thank you, Jenna. I think that we're going to move now to Amy's presentation about mixed delivery. There's still a number of questions in here. I do want folks to know if you've typed questions and we haven't yet been able to address them, we do share the questions with all of the speakers so that we can follow up afterwards. So never fear, if we're not able to get to it today, we will give our speakers the chance to answer your questions later. And Jen, if you can stick around, there may be more questions for you after Amy's presentation. Thank you so much. And now I'm happy to welcome Amy Hathaway, Vice President of Community Networks with Virginia Early Childhood Foundation. And Amy, take it away.
Thanks, Kathy, and good afternoon, everyone. Really appreciate the chance to talk to you about mixed delivery today. Next slide. The Virginia Early Childhood Foundation's Mixed Delivery Program, or Mixed Delivery for short, was first piloted as a way to test innovative strategies that would shed light on how public funds in private preschool and childcare could serve eligible children who have been or underserved. Almost 7 years after its inception, mixed delivery is now a vital part of Virginia's early childhood landscape, helping Virginia to achieve the vision and goals that Jenna just laid out. Mixed delivery has always been a problem-solving innovation for Virginia. First created to solve some of the limitations of VPI, mixed delivery is a nimble testing ground, capable of learning lessons on the fly and integrating solutions quickly. It is set up to be Virginia's cost of quality program that can address all the characteristics and challenges that will lead to successful public-private choice in early childhood in Virginia. This meets family needs and preferences and also children's school readiness needs. While mixed delivery has been a vital option for many families in Virginia who need and want high quality early childhood care and education services for their children, mixed delivery is not only about slots. It is an innovation that allows us to test how to better support providers and the cost of the quality early care and education that they provide, and how we make a truly public-private system work for Virginia. A vital mixed delivery system made up of mixed delivery means made up of early childhood care and education providers in both public and private facilities is not only essential to providing equitable access to school readiness services, but also provides important flexibilities and options that support working families. Next slide. This map is from VECF's webpage, and if you want to take a closer look, we'll share the web address in a couple minutes. It shows that preschoolers are served in 10 areas of the state, and you can see all those in the brightly colored areas on this map. And starting this year, as Jenna mentioned, mixed delivery has piloted serving infants and toddlers in 3 regions. And so those regions are in the far southwest corner of the state, the far southeastern corner of the state, and more towards the middle in the Shenandoah Valley and greater Charlottesville area. Next slide. So mixed delivery has evolved significantly over the 7 or so years of its existence. While several things haven't changed from the beginning, mixed delivery has been pioneered by organizations and regions across Virginia, which know their communities and have tested innovative strategies to barriers that kept eligible children from being served by public preschool. It is focused on family choice and on helping us learn the true cost of quality early childhood in Virginia. From fiscal years 17 through 20, the Virginia Early Childhood Foundation, in consultation with the VDOE, offered competitive grants to communities across the state. And these communities tested innovations to address barriers such as lack of space, by using available capacity and community-based early childhood care and education programs, including family child care and child care centers. They addressed the need for full year option for working families, which didn't require families to transport children from one site to another during the day, by providing care in these community settings. They tested financial strategies that are both adaptive and flexible, and focused on the most essential teacher competencies versus a specific degree requirement as the only way teachers can become qualified. This supports a stable, diverse, and talented early educator workforce, which we all know is so critical. Building on these learnings, in fiscal year 21, the mixed delivery program shifted focus to increasing the number of eligible children served in private settings by more fully covering the cost of quality of care and education. Language was included in the fiscal year 21 and to 22 biennial budget to expand mixed delivery program to also serve at-risk 3-year-olds, and in fiscal year 23 to expand services to include infants and toddlers. We are looking forward to increased investment in mixed delivery in fiscal year 24 and beyond, and also to shift to administration of mixed delivery by our ready regions. Next slide. So this chart shows increased investment in mixed delivery over the years. You could see those first years that they were focused on testing barriers and using innovations, served approximately 250 children per year. In fiscal year 21, we were able to shift to this access model and added 3-year-olds that we were serving. In fiscal year 22, you'll see a very large increase in investment for preschoolers, and in fiscal year 23, another increase in serving preschoolers and the exciting addition of a infant toddler pilot. These numbers are a little bit higher than the ones Jenna shared, as these were from the end of December. So you can see numbers that are accurate as of now. Next slide. All of this is built on evidence that mixed delivery really does work. In 2019, an independent contractor conducted an evaluation of the first years of mixed delivery, and we learned that children in mixed delivery classrooms achieved comparable outcomes to those of children in VPI classrooms. The majority of children in both VPI and mixed delivery classrooms achieved outcomes that met or exceeded outcomes typical for their age group, and that teacher credentials varied across mixed delivery and VPI, yet children achieved similar outcomes across different settings. Next slide. We are currently conducting an evaluation of mixed delivery, and we hope to learn more about how children do, how well mixed delivery supports what families prefer, how mixed delivery supports early childhood care and education providers, and more about the true cost of quality. We're asking questions in 3 main areas. The first has to do with family choice and access. So questions such as, to what extent does mixed delivery meet family needs and preferences? How has mixed delivery increased the accessibility of early childhood care and education options in areas that did not have enough affordable slots to meet working families' needs? And what type of childcare programs, for example, centers or family childcare, participate in mixed delivery? The second group of questions are about financial health and stability of the participating centers. So how do grantees encourage the sustainability of programs in mixed delivery? How do programs use mixed delivery funds? What is the hourly cost of providing early childhood care and education services through mixed delivery? To what extent does participation in mixed delivery support program sustainability? And how does mixed delivery funding impact compensation, including benefits and retention of classroom staff? And the third bucket of questions that we're asking are about program quality and child outcomes. So how has participation in mixed delivery helped programs invest in quality improvements? How has the VKRP child assessment been implemented, and how have scores for children served by mixed delivery changed from fall to spring? And how does teacher education, training, and experience impact those child outcomes for children served by mixed delivery? The evaluation will continue throughout 2023, and we expect to be able to share insights at the end of this year. Next slide. So mixed delivery has joined Head Start and Early Head Start, VPI, and child care subsidy as a critical part of the early childhood care and education landscape in Virginia, and increases the reach and flexibility of public funds to support families. It serves children birth to 5 in private settings, childcare centers, and family childcare to deliver publicly funded services, and provides hours and days of operation that gets families back to work. Mixed delivery promotes school readiness, including support for childcare workforce, child assessment, and curriculum. And the requirements, which are aligned with VPIs, ensure that there is an emphasis on developmentally appropriate care and education that will prepare children for success in school and in life. Next slide. Through the design of the program, mixed delivery offers stable, predictable revenue source for early childhood care and education providers, supporting quality investments, including the option for programs to increase teacher compensation and retain talented teachers. Mixed delivery reimburses providers based on contracts. These are year-long and renewable. They're enrollment-based rather than attendance-based, and they're in blocks of slots that are large enough to help support quality improvements. By having a substantive portion of mixed delivery slots in classrooms, there are sufficient funds to increase wages of staff in mixed delivery classrooms, being able to achieve the educator compensation goals, which contribute to teacher retention and to quality with less turnover. Next slide. And we want to really emphasize what mixed delivery means for each of you. It's a unique program that gives families a year-round option of a high-quality, private early childhood care and education provider that meets their needs and their families' preferences. Mixed delivery provides stable contract-based funding and quality supports to licensed early childhood care and education providers to increase access to high-quality services to children who otherwise would not have the opportunity to attend. It provides an opportunity for communities and regions to strengthen partnerships across their regions. Mixed delivery grantees, which will become ready regions only in the next fiscal year, represent public-private community collaboratives and often include stakeholders such as private providers, United Way, Head Start grantees, community action agencies, local school divisions, and business leaders. In Virginia, we want all families to be able to work and all children to be ready for school. They should all children and all families with young children should have access to high quality early childhood care and education. And there's no one early childhood care and education program that can meet all families and children's needs. Along with Head Start and Early Head Start, child care subsidy, and VPI, mixed delivery is a critical part of Virginia's public-private early childhood care and education system. Next slide. If you're interested in learning more about mixed delivery, we'd love to help you do that. Please visit our website, and this is the address for our mixed delivery page at VECF, or you can email us at info@vecf.org. So Kathy, I'm happy to answer any questions that might have come up about mixed delivery before we let folks go this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Amy. Great summary. And Nolly, if you could go back to the last slide with the information about where to find information about mixed delivery. Amy, I wonder if you would voice over this a little bit in addition to the website and the email, just explain a little bit about how a potentially interested provider could learn more about mixed delivery and how they could participate.
Absolutely, Kathy. So I would suggest if folks can easily have access to the website, that they can take a look at the page, which will give them a good picture of where mixed delivery is currently operating. It's operating in 8 out of 9 of our ready regions, and we hope to expand to all 9 regions as we start our new mixed delivery year in July. And so if you're interested in learning more about mixed delivery in your community, I would reach out to either one of those ready region leads, or you can please reach out to us at info@vecf.org, and we'd be more than happy to talk to you about what opportunities might be available to connect you to the right folks in your community.
Thank you. And also folks are wondering when the window may be open to apply next to be one of these programs. Can you give a little sense of timeline?
Sure. So our application period goes to the organizations that lead mixed delivery, and that application period will start in February and will continue through May. And what will be happening is those ready regions who will be submitting applications to operate mixed delivery programs in their region will be talking with interested early childhood care and education partners during that kind of starting probably now or soon after now through February and into the spring. So it would be really important if you're interested to reach out to your ready region partners in your region, or please do reach out to us at this email address and we'll be happy to get you connected.
And we have time for a couple more questions. Are home-based providers eligible to participate in mixed delivery?
We absolutely are. We understand that many families prefer family child care for one reason or another. And so we encourage family child care providers to find out more about mixed delivery and see if that'll work for them.
And do you anticipate changes coming up for around the competitive process for mixed delivery grantees?
So as was mentioned a little bit earlier, the grants will be made to ready regions to coordinate mixed delivery. In many regions that will not change the coordinating part, and so the applications will be from ready regions, but they will be looking at their whole region in terms of deciding where new slots will be applied for.
All right, thank you. Jenna, a couple of last questions that I'll bring you in on. Some folks are asking if they're interested in potentially being a VPI provider. Where do they go for information?
Absolutely. So we will be rolling that out later this spring. Typically, it involves a partnership with your school division, and so we'll give everybody a heads up via Readiness Connections, which is the Department of Education weekly newsletter. So please go to our new website, doe.virginia.gov. If you're not signed up for that now, be sure to sign up for that. But we roll it out. Applications are similar to mixed delivery due by the middle of May. And so we try to roll that out with all the expectations in the late winter, early spring, and really encourage you to talk to your school divisions because they are the ones who help make those decisions locally.
Thank you. And I will give you the last question of the day. This is back to the great interest in the ratio changes. Can family day homes request to use those changes or to receive a waiver for those changes?
My understanding, if we can look at the exact language, I believe it is Child Day Centers participating in the child care subsidy program that will likely be eligible for that as it stands right now. So I'll double check on that and confirm. And again, please don't, this is not yet law. So please do not make any changes to your ratios right now. The regulations that are on our website are the regulations that apply to child day centers or to family day homes. But if this does pass, you could expect notification in writing from the Department of Education, and it will be pretty clear as to whether it's child day centers, all child day centers, or just, for example, child day centers that take child care subsidy program. Last time, the language, I think, was all child day centers. This time it appears slightly more limited. And so again, another opportunity for advocacy if you'd like to see that be more expanded.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jenna. I really want to thank all of our speakers today and thank all of the many attendees who've spent this last hour with us. I think we were able to get to many of the questions. There are many more that remain. What I will say is that you're typing those questions in and participating gives us a really great sort of finger on the pulse of what's going on, what your concerns are, what your interests are. And that's very helpful to us as we think about improving and refining these programs moving forward. So just want to thank you again for signing on today, hearing all this great news about the really exciting things going on in Virginia. We're so grateful to be able to work in partnership with all of you and with the folks at the Department of Education and others to make sure that these services and programs are alive and well and growing. And thanks to all of you for what you do every day. We really appreciate the value that you bring to this Commonwealth. Have a great afternoon, and thank you.